All right, well, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out. I see we've multiplied on the audience members, so thank you for those coming out on your personal time to share your ideas or at least see what the committee is discussing. Very important topic that's been lingering for a little while, so I'm glad that we're finally here to try to come up with some solutions. I just wanted to start with a recap on some of my homework. I called it homework because that's how I closed it out in the committee last week. My deliverables. One was regarding the email address. It was suggested as an email address or a phone number or a way for members of the public to reach out to the committee to give comments or suggestions. We went slightly different path. We didn't need to reinvent the wheel because there was already a comment process that dropped down to the water department. So I asked staff to promote that site and allow members to the audience to submit comments and suggestions. That's what you have in front of you, were 2 comments or suggestions. I haven't read it yet, that were submitted to the committee. So that gives the public access to us that can't come to the meetings or ahead of time. So we solved that issue. The public comments, I wrote it down here that Tim had suggested the idea of members of the public that can go live and give us suggestions or comments. And he recommended to us a site that's called Pigeonhole, 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 which we tested, Tim tested, my staff tested it, and that was also promoted through the city's social media website as the link. I think they did 3 posts, if I recall, letting the community know that the meeting starts at 5:30 today, and that we will be monitoring it live, Eric, myself, and I think Tim has it there too. If anybody else wants to, they can time in there. And as they come through at the appropriate time, I'll share or the comment or the question with the committee and the public. So we took care of that deliverable, and then Deltona Water financials. I know we got it to you today. Sorry for the short time frame on the financials. What I had staff do is extrapolate from the Deltona Water audit the pages that were relevant to Deltona Water, and we concise that into one PDF. And you all, I spent a good portion of my day going through that today. And so you all have that last little. And then the last thing that I wrote down as my to-do was the sound system. There was concerns from members of the public that they couldn't hear us. So staff accommodated and gave us this little microphone. And I think I'm seeing heads nod that people could hear us. So that solved that final deliverable there. And to members of the audience, we're going to get this fired up a little bit as far as the committee starting to pick up where we left off on scope, and then we'll open it up to the members of the audience to give any ideas, suggestions, or questions. So kind of within some type of organization so that people are not talking over each other, we'll certainly let everybody speak and share their thoughts, okay? That's all I ask for. If we're talking over each other, nobody's hearing. So, and then I provided basically just a little summary of my notes here. It's the scope of audit notes where I had left off as far as the comments, and I think Dana has provided one also. I wanted to, before we open up again, one of the things that the committee mentioned last week was, and when we go through the scope, I want us to keep this in mind. There was a concern about how broad the scope would be. And someone mentioned even we got to watch how broad we make it and what that potential cost could be. There was also the suggestion that can the committee potentially, what we would probably consider low-hanging fruits based on our deliberations on either service-oriented stuff, customer-oriented stuff, that we can put together our own recommendations list to the committee, to the commission, on what we found as things that they should look into and possibly implement ideas for service-oriented. So I want us to keep that in mind as we go through our list and say, hey, can that go into the committee's list and then auditor list so that we can narrow that if that's. I see heads bobbing, so I think I'm getting acknowledgement on that. Anyway.
I would like to start out with the, if you don't have a copy of it, there's a copy up here, the Deltona Water Audit Suggested Scope. It's up here. And if you look down at the bottom, you'll see that the scope areas presented here are taken from the audit performed by KPMG for Charlotte County, Florida Utilities in 2015. So I just want to let you know you can go and you can look at the whole audit, which I've been looking at because it is a very thorough audit. Charlotte County is about 186,000 residents. So the reason for bringing that up is because they have like looked under rocks for everything. And if you look at that audit, you'll see how thorough it was. We can pull, as you say, low-hanging fruit from that already, if we can take a look at that and see what's important to us, because now, and when I tell you this, I looked at also the budget for that year for Charlotte, okay, for Charlotte County. And what we could deduce was that each one of these numbers, 1 through 18 here, not the subsets, but numbers, about $17,000 for each component for the whole cost of their audit, okay? So do due diligence yourself. I didn't have that much time. I was looking more at the scope of that audit. But in looking at what I have been told before, what we have talked about, what we talked about last time, breaking it down into these 18 sections, right? I think really encompasses, and you can agree after looking at that very thorough audit, what we might like to, you know what I mean, what we might like to include, because it includes these things when we're talking about the performance and the operational. So that is just, you know, my take on that. Somebody's already done it, and
we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I love it.
Exactly.
And certainly discuss what we felt is pertinent to us.
Exactly, and I would encourage the residents to read it also. You can grab a copy up here and go to that site. You can blow it up as big as you need to and look at the thorough audit and so for some light reading. But it is very, very thorough, and I think that it has really touched on a lot of the hot buttons that we have talked about as residents and sitting up here on the committee also. So that's what I have as far, that's where this came from.
Anybody got any comments on that?
I like the list. Under financial planning and management,
What number?
number
First
1, I would add a 1A for the necessity of a 25% surcharge, which is absolutely killing those of us who are outside city limits.
Anybody else? Tim?
Which I just want to say that not only that, but you have that also as one of our main topics, right? You have it on your notes as well under number 9. So I think that like we can cross that off, like, you know what I mean? Getting to one master list and slay it that way.
Why don't we go down your list in each one and have comments on that? That way we stay kind of sort of organized. Is that fair? Financial planning, I'll read it, and then I know Tim has already timed it. Financial planning and management, I know that's a broad category, but what are we really looking for there? Are we running well-oiled ship?
I gotta say, I was kind of blown away by the amount of bonds that are out there.
As I was.
It's now I get why they're really having a 25% surcharge, and its proceeds financing arrangements were used to fund planning, design, pre-construction activities. I mean, it's just bond after bond. So I think, who's making the bonds? Who's proposing the bonds? What does it take to actually get a bond passed? That process, the amount of interest that's being paid for the bonds is astonishing.
Yeah,
so I would add that.
Well, I can answer those questions. I mean, only because I've been involved in
Yeah,
the process. The bonds are typically done in the markets, you know, the exchange markets, and those municipal bonds is a process for it. I'm not defending, I'm just letting you know, there's plenty of folks out there that are pushing municipal bonds, I mean, to loan money, basically a loan, to cities. And typically they will put certain requirements on the city saying you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to not be in violation of the bonds. And in some cases, those are rate increases in certain time frames and complying with other types of things. And as I mentioned last week, sometimes that interest is accrued regardless if you pay. That's one thing I forgot to check, and I'll check for the next time we meet, whether or not if there is a prepayment penalty on that. But I think this is one of those that the interest is accrued. But there's a process for that. Where I think we would agree, and I'll go to Santiago, is and we can't change the future, we can't have that time machine, right?
Right.
And was it a good decision to do? I don't think we can change that here.
No, it's
How do
what's
we
done
get
is
out-
done.
Yeah. how do we
But
get out-
I think it's the process of internally, how do we come to the point of, hey, we need to look at some bonds.
Yeah, and that's largely a city commission decision. Remember, they're the electeds, right? And that's how we hold them accountable.
But
But
it goes back to Deltona Water though, a lot of these where they're being used. So what's the process for Deltona Water to request that? That's what I'm interested in learning about.
okay.
So my question regarding the bonds was, which I really feel like it needs to be part of what the auditor is looking into. One, are we taking out bonds for specific legitimate reasons? Two, are we completing the projects that we took out the bond for?
Okay.
Three, are we transferring, which legally we're not supposed to be doing, transferring money from one bond to a different project? And four, which I think would be my final point, are we paying our bonds on time? And if we're not paying them on time, what is the time frame we're paying them in? Because I keep hearing, and I think this will help with the peace of mind for the residents. For example, with the center, we've been paying all those bills late. So on a financial side, are we also paying our bonds late, which is we're accruing interest and higher interest and late fees and penalties?
It's
So
about compliance with our bonds, basically.
Yes.
Are we compliant? Okay, that's a good one, I think. That's
So,
great.
would that fall under 6, or really would that actually be under 1?
could be a combination of either.
Okay, so keep it under 1 because.
Yeah, I would keep it under 1.
I don't know.
So this audit that was done here, this was just done last year, right? And
That's a financial audit, yes.
so we know the state that we're in.
Yeah. And the way that process works, just to let you know, that's governed largely by the process, by state law, and I think the procurement process is either 3 or 5 years, and that they're required to put it out for bid for a certain period of time, and it's competitively bid, and the city commission picks a vendor based on, the procurement process we heard last week, and then they put it out for bid again, and it's supposed to be an independent person that does this throughout the state.
So being that we know the dollar amounts here and the situation that we're in, and what it's gonna cost to have to go back over this again, I don't know if we want to just kind of pick our pain points and say, what's the issue now going forward? How do we resolve or fix or look at different things, put in some best practices or, implement something differently or what have you to see, where we can save money or do whatever. I mean, I don't see, looking at this and looking at everything that we know already, and it's less than a year, that we have to pay
Yeah.
to find that out. There's other bigger fish to
So
fry.
like what Santiago said, basically, that would be one element of that, the bonding side of the financials. Are we in
compliance.
compliance? And I would even add to that, for them to review what opportunities are there.
To pay them off.
Yeah, and what the, yeah. I mean,
Who's the oversight? What is the oversight here?
I'm sure they have an auditor that audits the city to make sure they're in compliance with the bond. That's me guessing, just knowing how other procedures work. I can't confirm that, but I would bet that there is a person within the firm that we owe the money to that checks things out. But that's me guessing.
So can we say,
If that exists, can't we pull that?
Yeah, and I'll get that. Yeah.
I just want to say, so under our financial planning and management, can we be safe to say that the necessity of the 25% surcharge and the bond issues are the most pressing, and those can go off into all kinds of rabbit holes, and the auditor would be well qualified to do that? Yes?
I think so.
Can we say that?
That's fair. Instead of just a full, how much do you take in more?
We don't really need to re-audit
Yeah.
that part of it, but at least with the bonding part, I think
That's
that-
driving a lot of the decisions.
We get
That's
to
where you're
the
going.
granular level on that, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, reclaimed water. I know that's only in certain parts of our communities, that mostly in subdivisions. I was talking to one of our residents here about that. One of the things that did strike me odd about that, just personal opinion, was how we're charging the same base rate, basically is the meter rate, basically, as regular water on that. And we typically will do that, reclaimed water, provided in certain communities at a lower gallon rate, but that's not really where our problem lies. right? Our problem lies in sewer. And you know, why have this is my opinion, have a similar rate, a meter rate for reclaimed water meters?
Is that, okay, does the committee or does the public think that that's an audible, that to spend money on the audit or to push that as like policy change?
Could
Does
be,
the
could
auditing,
be, yeah, policy.
what does the committee think?
Go ahead.
I think that's one of those, I don't know. I'm gonna listen for a second. I haven't completed my thought.
I'll tell you what my concern was there, because ultimately this came out to around $40-something just to be a customer for this one individual that's in the audience. Just to be a customer, it's $40-something.
As a base rate?
Yes. That's high.
That is extremely high. Yeah.
Every month?
Yeah, just to be a customer.
So that's a
doesn't-
customer service charge, $40
that
a month.
doesn't- You don't use 1 gallon of water.
Oh, yeah, that's,
And
And that was
For
for
what?
water, sewer, and reclaim?
yeah, yeah, all three.
So-
And what I would
So
ask,
policy review on how the rates, reclaimed water rates are figured out? Because somewhere, this is why I stumbled before, somewhere I heard that the golf course gets
Yeah.
one heck of a deal.
Can I say something?
It's called free.
Can I say something to that point, okay? I think that it's been like explained a lot, but never in a centralized location. People get different, and me being included, get bits and parts of that story. And I think that the auditor could go in and have one narrative to put in the report and just say, we're answering that question once and for all.
Right, I like that idea.
And leave it for the auditor to
I like it.
explain away. So we're not trying to assume, guesstimate, whatever that
Thank you.
relationship is. So
Also, I'd like to make a quick suggestion regarding the reclaimed water. Instead of looking into having the auditor and possibly a way to save a little bit of money, can we take as a homework, each of us, look at a couple of cities that have comparable statistics as ours and pretty much see how much they're charging for their reclaimed water? And then if we see that there's a big disparity, then maybe we can add it to be reviewed by the auditor, because if it's really not necessary, I mean, I really don't see that one being the majority of the problem. I mean, we have way bigger fish,
Yeah.
you know, to fry than that. But if there is a big disparity, then yes, of course, we add it.
So add that as an action item for each one of us, yes, to do for next week, yes?
go for it.
Okay.
that's a hefty customer service
And I
charge.
brought up the customer connect more so for the 3 different charges to highlight that. And I would like to see, you know, is that the norm? Is that happening in all cities as far as water, charging 3 different rates? A base customer rate of $45, right?
That would be, some of that perhaps would be in, and I've read it, but I'll have to go through it again, the rate study, Stantec report for the rate
Did they
study.
do an analysis of other places in that?
I don't know about the, not the reclaim.
Basically, yeah, a customer is $45 just to be a customer.
Yeah, no.
So reclaimed water system, can we say, it would be safe to say that as an action item, we will all review base rates, right? And come back with a report on that, and then we will move the golf course to audit action, just so that we can
Yes.
kind of, it won't take them that long
Yeah.
for the auditor, for it to come from the
Yeah,
auditor.
I agree.
Okay, all right.
Can we do those base rates when we do the comparison to cities that are similar to ours, size-wise?
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
For the golf course, you said that there's some things that we can add on as a suggestion on our behalf, not from the auditor. Maybe having the city attorney, since we already pay them, for them to look at the actual legalities where they can explain it to the public if we can get out of whatever contract our former mayor put us into.
Yeah, I think that's what Dana was alluding to, instead of, because there've been a number of, but not the city attorney, the auditor to look at.
Let the auditor look and direct.
There've been a number of explanations, even I'm confused, and I was the city commissioner. I think I'll tell you,
Could they
I
look
don't
at the
know.
legality of it though?
I think that person, this is what I would envision, would get with the city attorney and
Okay.
dig into what the agreement is and then report it back to
Okay.
part of the report.
Because I'm interested in seeing if there's a way we can get out of it.
That's a way to, that's been part of our due diligence of directing the
Yeah.
scope.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could absolutely
Yeah.
be, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and let them do that work. Did you have something else, Valerie? I think you were saying-
No, that's good.
We'll go about midway through our list, and then I'll open it up so we won't wait in case, I know if I'm an audience member, I have questions as I go, right? So I'll stop around midway through and then open it up for the public, and then we'll continue from there, okay? That way everybody has an opportunity. All right, human capital management, what are we talking about there? Are we over? I'm hearing that there's a possibility we're understaffed, but that's only one source. I don't know the answer to that.
Staffing, right, to look at, training and development. You know, there is, in workforce management and strategy. Are you happy? Are the employees being able to evaluate their supervisors in a measurable way? What do the performance evaluation forms look like, right, on everyone so that staffers are getting rewarded and paid accordingly or getting moved into their experience level, that kind of thing. Training and development, one of my biggest things is customer service. It is really, when you're in crisis with a bill that you're looking at, to be able to, you know, not be able to get through to hold for 20, 30 minutes, and to speak to the human part of it, to have these ladies and gentlemen, whoever is working there, they're dealing with so much volume because there's so many problems that their frustration level is palpable, you know, in dealing with it. So how do we make sure that they're getting the support that they need? So it's so that the staff is getting support and the community is getting support.
I also think that if the staff, especially the ones on a management level, if they actually have the ability to perform their duties as some type of manager or some type of supervisor, you know, because if you're a supervisor and you're really not able to take care of your duties because you have somebody else above you that's kind of micromanaging you, it's going to affect the whole staff and the morale of the department as well.
Yeah, I think that might be, I don't disagree with you. I think that we covered on the development side, maybe? Right? I think that's within,
Yeah.
my expectation is that whatever we come up with the scope areas, and I think we should have presentations, by the way. Those are questions we should ask them. Is part of your training and development thing, are you going to look into these things, right? And answer, instead of us spelling all of that out, right?
Yeah, I have it all spelled out here in questions, you know. You know, is there formal training that's conducted? If so, how long? Are they doing computer-based training? If not, how are they learning? Is it, you know, somebody coming in and just sitting with them side by side individually? Do they have statistical performances that they need to adhere to? Do they incorporate troubleshooting, you know, in their training? If you've got the disgruntled customer and it gets escalated, who handles that? How's that being handled? Who takes those calls? If it's not resolved, what's the next step? Where does the customer go?
Dispute resolution?
Right, where do they go for that? Do they focus on one-call resolution, you know, and taking care of that? Do they have a goal set for their service level? You know, do they have a specific time in which, you know, we're going to answer all these calls within X amount of time by X amount of percentage, you know? So the goal is 80% of the time I'm going to answer this call in 50 seconds or less, or something like that.
Call center background.
Right. Do they have any kind of resource books? You know, any kind of talking points? Is anybody there able to explain intelligently, why is there a 25% surcharge? You know, through no fault of their own, but they may not be able to explain it to a customer, and it's, you know, what is this on my bill? What does this mean? You know?
Does anybody know what the turnover rate is at Deltona Water?
The auditor will.
As far as staffing, I would ask that question then.
It's high.
It's high.
Well,
Yeah.
We'll certainly find out with staffing.
Right.
The staffing question.
But subject
I
matter
think-
experts, do they have presentations that come in to help them out? Do they have any kind of training for difficult customers? abusive customers or what have you. I mean, we've got customers that are not happy with the way things are going, but are they trained to handle those, you know? Be empathetic, you know,
And I
to the
think those
situation.
are, well, when they come before us, those are great questions to ask and see how they respond to that, if that's gonna be part of their plan.
And I think that you pretty much covered it, and
Yeah.
moving forward with the auditor, with that, yeah. And remembering too that the auditors already know these things, and they're
Yeah.
gonna bring up the key points as
Yeah.
well, you know, and what matrix should be assigned to this task or whatever. I mean, you have that background, you understand that. We have.
Those are all good things.
Yeah.
Right.
Even I think one of the things that we can ask the auditors are, does the city of Deltona have comparable performance reviews compared to other cities? I mean, are we using performance reviews that are, for example, if I get a performance review from either of my employers, sometimes it's 3 or 4 pages long. I've seen some of the performance reviews here, and they're like a page or page and a half.
So it'd be safe to say that we already know that they're not thorough and that we can ask for that by name.
But that's what I want, is for the auditor to say it, so it's not one of
Yeah.
us saying it.
They don't even do employee reviews anymore.
Workforce management and strategy, I think we covered that in our comments, right?
Yep.
I'll give you my email.
Yeah, but.
Right, I think we need to find out, do they have their statistical, but any kind of reports from workforce management? Do they have the capabilities of being able to keep track of how many complaints that they have?
No.
No?
I already told you that.
Okay.
There's no ticketing system, by the way, for supervisor calls or escalator calls.
Okay, so we,
Regulatory compliance, we're going to number 4.
It's bad.
So we talked a little bit about that last week, mainly for water quality reports and stuff like that. I know they're required, and from what I understand, is they're posted somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but there's a place where data on compliance with water quality are done. Is there any other area on the regulatory side?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a 4 or a 5, but Santiago, maybe you could speak to this, because you mentioned it last week, that they were using chemicals that are, help me out.
So before we used to process or clean our water with fluoride, that's monitored by the EPA. Then they switched over to a different detergent that is not monitored by the EPA, and it does have secondary effects, of course, not over a couple of days, but in the terms of consumption in a couple of years, you could have some effects. One of those effects is one of them produces something called THC, which is somewhat of a carcinogen. So
Affects the liver, from what I understand.
yes.
All right, so
So-
we want to look at regulatory compliance from what
And, yeah,
levels?
chemical use, detergents.
yes.
Well, I think it's down at 18.
Wastewater
I
collection
think
and
that
treatment.
that would probably
Water
be.
treatment,
Yeah.
water treatment and distribution, that'll be number
18.
18.
Yeah, that will be. So what other
Okay.
regulatory compliance will
thank
we
you.
look for there besides that? That one we can take out, or I'm just throwing out
Well,
ideas?
Move it down to number 8.
St. John's.
St. John's is St. John's keeps a close eye on us, trust me, we're not pulling the wool over St. John's. That's my opinion, just from years of dealing with them.
So regulatory compliance, I think that we can address anything that we need there by distribution or 17 or 18.
We can probably
Yes.
cross out 4.
Keep it in the back of our mind, we can look up
Yeah.
what that actually means, because that's in the report.
That's a good
right,
point.
That is, look up what that means if it becomes, you know,
That's
yeah.
a good point. So for right now, we're saying possibly removing that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We're just trying to
Put it under 18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and I don't know what regulatory, I mean, is
That's
it business, is it like,
It's in that report, like I said, they go into great detail about that, so that we can look at that actual report and say, oh, we, you know, need the things in here.
all right, so we'll research that.
Internal controls. That's pretty broad.
Right?
I'm just gonna just say yes on whatever that, and go into, suggest that we read deeply on that.
Okay.
Because that's a deep subject, and let's just put a star and asterisk and whatever else, and visit that in depth, and then come back to that, but go ahead and say, yeah, we're gonna do number 5.
Internal reporting and accountability. So we got accountability, within that we have subsections, accountability, strategic planning, internal performance standards. Wow, I think we kind of said some of these things already, right? Communication, and we said these things already. I think it's fair.
3 and 6, pretty much, we marry those and get what we want from 3 and 6.
And 13.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
13 goes to 3 and 6.
All the
When I-
customer service and billing.
And she talked all about the customer service side of it.
Okay.
So, just for my purposes again, what are we gonna do? We're gonna combine 3 and 6?
3, 6,
And
and
13.
13.
Yeah, 13.
What are we gonna title it?
Human capital management.
I don't think that's the correct title.
No, it's got,
You
because
need
it's
to leave
got
the cost center broke out.
internal reporting and accountability, or, I don't know.
I think reporting and accountability, I mean, that's probably the best title for all three of
Well,
those.
maybe we do 3 and 6 together, 3 and 6, and then leave 13. 'cause
I don't
they're
think
gonna-
13 should be in there. I think 13 should
So
be
3 and
separate.
6 should be good, yes?
Because a lot of the stuff that we talk about, not everything, but I would say it's mostly dominated by number 13.
Mhm.
Let's leave it separate.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think
It has its
so.
own emphasis, right?
Right. Yeah, because communication reporting, performance standards, control, strategic, yeah, do we have people that forecast how many calls we're gonna be getting, on a daily basis, looking at the historical performances, statistical performances?
Well, I think the strategic planning also could fall in, under the financial planning and management, especially when it comes to bonds and things like that.
What number is that? Oh, that's for number
16.
1.
But wouldn't that include also, however, like every other, like wastewater, they have,
Yeah.
breaking that
yeah.
down for, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? That, those kinds of things also,
Are we
so.
positioned well with, for other things, in the
Yeah.
future growth and stuff like that?
Do we need to, like,
The number 7, are we on number 7?
yeah,
Purchasing?
I have one on that one. I actually went, when I was running for office, I went through a bunch of different departments, and I noticed that our city does not have a procurement department.
Yes, we do.
We do?
Yes, we do. We do.
So usually,
The lady that was here, she works in purchasing. She's dedicated to Deltona Water, and Kate Kraus is the director.
so when you have a procurement department, this is what I'm asking. When you have a procurement department, usually you have to go, for example, you don't have Deltona Water, all these other different areas in the city buying, for example, let's say cleaning supplies. They're usually all bundled up in one, and then they're divided, so you get the most effective cost savings for the whole city. Also, when you have a procurement department, you tend to go through a veteran's website first, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is a state law that you have to purchase through there first before you actually purchase through somebody like Office Depot, which I've seen a lot of stuff being purchased through Office Depot. And again, it does not make sense. If we have a procurement department, why are we buying at a higher rate through an Office Depot?
do we have to do that because we are an enterprise fund and this, we can't use stuff? I don't know, I'm asking.
No, I don't know.
That's
a good
a question I don't know the answer to because it's a separate entity, a separate business. Are they allowed? I don't know, that's a question.
I can tell you that I'm pretty familiar with this area
Okay.
of process, not all the intricacies, but there are a lot of laws that govern public procurement process. And they're required to follow certain procedures. With the dollar amount, what goes out to bid, do you need to get competitive bids? There's also what's called a piggyback process, where they don't always necessarily have to put it out a bid if someone already has. Like our neighboring city, DeBerry, put out a bid for blue pens, right? And they bidded it out just 6 months ago, and they got a good price, and we can just piggyback on buying the same blue pen from the same company that was awarded there. Just one example. And I don't know for Office Depot, but I'm going to assume, go on a limb, that they have put out a price that's special for, but I don't know.
Okay.
And because of the process that I know that, when I was a commissioner, I kind of looked in that area there for a little while, and I didn't get any red flags saying, what the heck. Now, should someone have bought the blue pen, right? We could always debate that, that's just more of a decision. But from a procedure perspective, and is it costing us more money, I never found fire. But I'm open to whatever the committee.
I only, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, I only say that because I used to do all the Wells Fargos in all of Volusia County. I used to order all their cleaning supplies, and when I was going through the budget, I'm seeing the water department spending $15,000 on cleaning supplies, and then I would go and into a different department, they're spending like $12,000. When you start adding all those up, you're talking about close to $50,000-$60,000.
And let me add this to it. I'm sorry, I should have
Yeah,
tidied
yeah.
up my comment because yes, no, when I look at the budget too, I'll even say, why the heck are you buying that, right?
Yeah.
Why are you spending so much on that? That's a legitimate question. I was just talking about process.
Okay.
They could spend $100,000 or $50,000, but they may have still followed a proper process. They just wasted money. There's a difference, right? And I'm not suggesting that that's what's happening here, but I don't know how we go there with that though.
Okay, I mean,
Is there a purchasing agent for the whole city?
There is.
So they would
It's a special
incorporate,
department for it.
so they would be responsible for purchasing everything for everybody in every department?
Yeah. Now, the Deltona Water is our largest enterprise fund that's separate from city stuff. They have their own dedicated person, which is the lady that was here last week, Ms. Siafi. She's the, I guess you want to call her purchasing agent. Kate Kraus manages that department. I just, from my perspective, if we're trying to trim, I don't know if there's anything there. Now, if we want to take that as a discussion, I think for committee recommendations, I think that maybe we should go there if we want to trim, because I don't know what they're going to find there. They're probably largely going to say they're following the procurement process, and we may not like the dollar amount, but that doesn't mean it's.
can you say just like we'll kind of look, just glance over it and look into it, right?
To see what the other company came up with?
No, to see, well, yeah, I mean, we're gonna read the report
Okay.
anyways, just put a little asterisk there
Fair
to
enough.
take a closer look to see if
See
it's
what comes
gonna
back?
be important to you.
And Santiago, when she gets us the report, look at what the that study came up with and see if there's anything that relates to what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Does
just
that make
take-
sense? And then we can bring it back.
Yeah, take
That's fair.
the suggested scope here, go to that bigger web, I mean, it's pages, and I think that each one of us has, well, I think we all have a collective focus, but I think we each have, bring to the table a focus also, an individual focus as well. So that's not my strength there, it's not my gift.
In the interest, someone did post a question, and I was gonna take questions on number 9, but only because this one put it online. After number 9, I'm gonna open up to the public, but I just wanna share this with the committee. Someone did post online, I don't want them to leave and not get their answer. The question was, are there any major issues with our water that we should be concerned about? I think I'm reading that question as to the quality of the water.
I heard that too.
I don't know of any alarms. I know there were some comments mentioned that there was potentially some type of chemical change, and I don't know how that relates to safety. We don't have the water person here.
There's a lot of customers who are, I think, from what it was explained to me, the farther away you are from the source, there's more detergents put into the water.
I heard that too.
And so we get, not warnings, but notifications from the EPA or from Deltona Water about the water quality. And for a long time, we were out of compliance. And so maybe it stems from, that question stems from that. And that's why I think it's important that we do look at water quality in the detergents and the consequences of those detergents. That should be looked at, and that should be very public.
The only thing is, and this is just me, I'm probably separate from everybody else, but if we're gonna do anything like that, it should be separate from this audit. I really don't wanna mix, I really don't think, just so we can give people, let's not go down a rabbit hole that we're gonna mix so many things together and then the commission's gonna get it, and then they're gonna be like, we're not gonna do anything.
Why don't I do this? I'll do my homework list. I'll try to get a summary of those water reports.
I can email you, or I can send it to Eric so he can give it to everybody.
Okay, the city's water.
I have for the
studies?
last 10 years,
Okay, I don't think we need to go that far back, but.
just in case.
And then at the same time, do an inquiry as to,
And I have for
were there any
DeBerry,
issues that were problems that we had to address, and where are we at with that?
I have for DeBerry, the land, even Sinclair, I got a bunch of them just to compare.
Was there any discrepancy?
We were the worst.
Really?
Yes.
I think that has to be discussed with, in the audit, but at what depth, I don't know, because it needs to be part of the conversation. If we're doing operational performance, financial, it is a big issue. Chemicals, can you get them somewhere else? Can you get a better chemical for this much money that's safer, da-da-da-da? I mean, you do go down a rabbit hole, but that is larger,
So could the-
larger
could
discussion.
It also goes, I'm sorry to cut, but it also goes back to, I'm paying $300 a month for my water and we don't even drink it.
Yeah. You're paying for a Cadillac and you're driving a Pinto. You are.
So could we have the auditor do an analysis of the reports that are being put out, right? The tests, right? Because those are independent tests, there's an independent company that does that. And do a comparative analysis?
Yeah.
Or maybe another thing as well to add on to that is why the change of detergents? I mean, is there a specific reason why?
That's
Would that-
operational, that's operational.
I'd like the auditor to do that.
Yeah.
I really would.
Operations and engineering?
Because they can access those reports,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Those are public reports, and they
Yes.
can do an analysis for us. And we'd have to define the period of analysis. I don't want to continue because,
And they're the pros with putting the soup together,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, if we just tell them, I want chicken noodle soup, they know that, you know what I mean, what ingredients to put in.
I
to
just
get
don't
us-
want us to go to a pouring where we're asking also for a water study and then we just went from an audit that'll cost us X amount of money and then we're gonna waste more money on top of that with an audit. And it's not gonna be worth, I mean, to me, it's worth to figure out what on earth is happening to our city, but I don't wanna put our residents in more debt.
no, I agree. And that's why I think that if we go the route by, these are already public reports, and they would take comparable sized cities, right? And do an analysis based on that. And
Right.
see on paper from an independent source where our water
And then
lies.
what you do with that as a community is really up to
That's
you,
different,
yeah, you know, what do you do with that information?
And I can submit the water study that I pay for. If that helps in any way, I can
Well,
submit it.
I think to stay with the intent and the drive of the committee to remain as independent as
got it.
possible and as transparent as possible, we'll go to the source, because I don't want us to be accused of anything.
Okay.
Not that your information's bad, but I want to stay true with the drive of the committee that, yeah, on purpose.
But are we basing things off the city's information?
The city's an independent, it's an independent company that comes out and submits that does the testing, and they submit that to the state. They submit that to the state, so, and that's the same thing every city does in the state of Florida. No different than that. After at number 9, I'll open it up. We just did purchasing, right? What did we decide for purchasing?
Purchasing.
We were gonna read the report to see if there was anything in there, right? And see
Yeah.
if there's any value to keeping something like that in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Administrative support,
What does that mean?
I mean,
That's all.
I don't know what that
I think
means.
that's one that we can probably fit somewhere else or just trim it
human
off.
capital management,
Thank you, yes.
Yeah. trim 8, yay.
No, trim 8,
Can I
I'm
make a
sorry,
comment?
I lost.
trim 8.
Can I make a
Ventura?
comment on it?
Yeah.
8 goes to 3.
Can I make a comment on it?
I'm gonna open it up right now. Comments? We good?
Carrie, go
Share
ahead.
comment.
Okay, we'll just go for the record, for everything. We're just gonna open it up halfway through for anybody that got comments on what we've discussed so far, or even what's coming up, if you got any suggestions of what's coming up. So, Terry, you want to go first?
Yeah.
Can you say your name, please, for the record?
Terry Ellis. Number 8, administrative support. The word is support there, but I don't know if that means, I guess we could go look at the study to see what it means, but in my brain, I'm thinking it's questions like, why aren't we able to, why do we have to jump through all the hoops that we do if you want to set up auto pay? Or things like, because if you get your bill electronically, if you don't get it in the mail, you don't get the notices that go out with it. You don't get the notices. So why is that?
I think we can
I
put
think
that
we
in.
can wrap that into number 13. You see number 13, what you just said?
That's not really call center. That's not really
No, but that's
customer
also-
service and
Clarify what
billing.
administrative
Those
support.
those are back office functions.
No, it says
So-
customer service and billing, and then D is billing specifically.
Well, I'm talking about billing so far, but there's a lot of other back office functions that I could come up with. So how about if I give you some back office function stuff that's in my brain and I'll send you.
Yeah, and if we can incorporate that into their
'Cause
team.
I think the word says administrative, but I think it's referring to back office support.
I think, yeah, you're right. You probably, yeah, I know what you mean.
So the
And-
technology, like would you be talking about like people who are on customer facing, but supporting the customer?
Yeah.
Call center,
It's like, why is Deltona Water even mailing out the bills? Shouldn't that be, shouldn't we, maybe it's better that we contract out? Like, they're physically handling that.
Well, that was one of my questions. Is the billing
Yeah, and so
handled by
that's-
a third-party vendor?
Yeah, and that to me is a back office function.
Okay, so do we know if they're handled by a vendor or
That
by
under
us?
11, under information, you know, like those
No, that's not information technology.
13.
That's a back office.
administrative support systems.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, maybe that's C. Okay, so we can make C back office support, administrative support system / back office support,
Okay.
and take out 8.
Thank you.
And then my other comment to this is, I'm reading some of the stuff online, and when we were talking about 18 and talking about water quality, there's a lot of people who are at the end of this, all they want to know is, are we going to get better water? And because everybody, either you have a filter, whole house filter, or either you're going to buy one, why? Like, what do we have to do to get better
To
water?
that, I would like to ask the public.
So,
I would like to ask every person that drinks water,
yeah.
what do you consider better water? And listen, I know that we could sit here and answer that, but what do you consider better water as compared to what? As compared to Ethiopia, as compared to Beverly Hills? I understand, but it's just gonna be asked. I'm trying to understand.
I know.
You know what I mean? Is
Well-
it the taste? Is it the chemicals, right? Is it the
Smell.
availability? Is it?
Taste, smell.
Mhm.
And
it's
then
not
how
only
do
that,
you-
we bathe with that water
And then
too.
how do you geographically quantify that? Because some people are absolutely happy with water. You're right, they're water without a filter system. So I really want us to fix that, the thing that we have bad water, and like, how do we do that? What are those?
Since our last meeting, I talked to, and I'm not trying to steer, but since our last meeting, I've talked to a few people that told me they like the water and they drink it. So there's difference of opinions out there. And it's probably because of what you said. Someone may not like the taste of this.
So here's the thing, if they're good water, it's kind of like null and void. What we're trying to answer is the dissatisfaction. So I love you if you love your water, that's good. If you don't like your water, I have we have a genuine concern. What is it about the water? It's like, you know, like the straw man and all of that, you know
Yeah.
what I mean, kind of stuff. I really want to know examples that are measurable, that we can go in and fix, you know what I mean? Are those things in black and white, right? That's what I'm talking about.
So I think to answer your question, Terry, I don't know if we're gonna get there with this just yet.
But let us know.
I don't know if that's gonna drive us to that, because it's such this.
I'm just saying that, I'm just saying that in talking to people, I'm hearing a lot of people say that I hope that that's what this audit comes out of this audit, is we get better water.
Yeah, I can see people saying that, I understand.
For me, it's the chemicals, you know.
That's what I'm saying, say that, tell me exactly, so that I
When we start getting
know.
consistent reports that we are not on the upper range of normal,
Yeah.
MDL levels.
that we're at the lower end of, you know,
Well, that's gonna go back to our study, what we're
Right.
talking about.
But we're gonna
doing.
look at that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm
exactly.
gonna look at that, and then we'll see where it goes from there.
I can interject a little bit to that.
Yes, sir.
We're new into the city of Deltona, because we have just crossed.
Can you tell us
the
your
road-
name for the record? I'm sorry.
Oh, Ken Hawkins, sorry. We live just across the road from Deltona city limits, and we run the county. We had a deep well, 275 feet, if I remember correctly. We had a water softener on there because we really didn't need it. She just wanted it, when she took a shower, that everything would lather up good. So anyway, we have, in the kitchen, we had a sponge that we used to wash the dishes with. And she could leave the sponge there until it basically the scrub side wore out and she could throw it away. In Deltona, she can open up a new sponge and wash the dishes twice with it, put it in the microwave to dry it out, leave it on the sink, and within 2 days, I can walk by that thing, and the stench from it takes my breath. Now, it takes her about 3 to 4 days before she starts picking up on it. To me, that means the water is not nearly as good as it is in the county of Deltona, in the county of Volusia, that isn't treated in any way. And Deltona gets every drop of water that they put out there in the pipes. They drag it out of the ground just like we did over in the county. So somewhere there is definitely some chemicals in it that is affecting water glasses, that if you use it 3 times without putting it through the dishwasher, spots to the point where you can't see through the glass. And the interaction
Shower
with the-
stalls.
Pardon?
Shower stalls, glass
Yeah.
stalls. Yeah.
And those, to that point, those are measurable things. When you say, what does good water look like? Go get me an example of good water, get me Deltona Water, and then you see where the difference is in between. Those are measurable things. Spotting, usually me to believe it's hard water,
Yeah.
right? I'm not a water expert, but I'm saying those are measurable things. You can look, why are there spots on the water? Is it chemical? Is it hard water? Where are you at? So those are the questions that I'm talking about
Now, we're putting,
answering there.
I can second that on the sponges too.
Can I make a comment?
Wait, hold on, hold on.
we're going to order, you just got here, we're gonna let some others first go
Okay,
through.
sponges are bad for us.
We're going to do the measurements and the examples. As part of the study that we talked about earlier, we're going to look at those results and compare them. I think you mentioned the county water, and you're right, both from the same place.
No, not the county water, the well water in the county.
Yeah, it's
It
county
wasn't
water.
from any county facility that supplied the water.
Okay, but we're going to do a comparison. We're going to request one, actually, as part of the scope. Yes, sir.
Let me know, and I'll let you have all the water from the old house that you want.
Michael Bukowski for the record. First, I'd like to start off by saying, how many committee members have any experience in the water field?
I shower every day.
Would you, can you make give me a definition of what you mean by that? So I can answer?
Myself, I'm a 21-year employee with a municipality. I have, in my 21 years there, I have water and wastewater experience as well as building roads. So, just to shed some light on some of the questions that have come up already.
Sure.
Typically, when water is treated at a facility, it's all treated the same. Because if you have facility X here, and facility X goes out, say, 2 miles, it's going to treat that water with enough treatment for that 2 miles. Now, where you live within that 2 miles is going to dictate, if you live closer to the water plant, you're going to have a stronger odor of chlorine and whatnot. If you live at the 2 mile mark, it's going to be a whole lot less. Well, the water's the same. As long as that system is closed, it's treated.
Yes.
Next, the whole thing, there is a problem in the water. The municipality I work for, I say the last 8 years, we've had maybe, just off the top of my head, 8 to 10 employees that have come from Deltona, and most of them have come from the water department. So with that being said, I also have a little bit of knowledge of the water system here. As far as reclaim, there is a whole lot of reclaimed water that gets pumped out into the drain field
Yes.
adjacent to the plant.
Yes.
Hundreds, almost thousands of gallons a day of water gets pumped out there with no charge, no use, no nothing, but going down along by the power lines. In order, with wastewater treatment, you also have the treated water that comes out of the plant. That needs a place to go. So, I don't know for sure, but the whole thing with the golf course was probably just a place to send that water, initially.
Yes.
Originally, yes.
Originally, it was to send that water somewhere.
Because we don't have
you
enough customers on reclaim.
Because you have to get out of the plant.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get that water out of the plant, you got more water coming in. And also too, as far as the meters, the city I work for, let me punch this up real quick because I don't want to get the numbers wrong. The city I work for, we have in the system 25,000 meters, and roughly it's around about 200 rereads we do every month. So that's below 1%. If you're within 1.5% of rereads, you're good. So I don't know what the situation is here in Deltona. I don't know, I haven't asked for those numbers, but that's basically it. In the water system here, we have old, what's called analog water meters. The failure rate for those water meters is almost zero. And if they do fail, they fail in the customer's behalf. Because there's impellers in there that every time it clicks over, it reads gallons. And when those impellers fail, it starts reading less. So you're actually getting a better deal. So then sometimes when they go in there and they replace that meter, sometimes that's where discrepancies on the bill start. Well, wait a minute, my bill last month was only $100, and now this month it's $350. What the hell happened? Well, yeah, because now you have a new meter that's reading accurately.
But it does that without a new meter being installed.
Well, that's some of the issues that need to be resolved. But I'm here just to shed some light and let the board know, the committee know, just to give you some insight, my insight.
Those are all great things. Make sure you keep coming. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry I was late. I had a previous obligation, and I apologize for not being able to stay for the whole meeting either because I have children that need me. But I have been gone for the past month and a half. Over the past year, our water quality, and I haven't even talked to Dina or Terry or Brandy about this, or Santiago, but our water quality where I live has gone downhill drastically. I'm a coffee fiend. Anybody who knows me will tell you that. Okay, I have 2 coffee ninjas and a regular Mr. Coffee coffee pot. Over the past year, I have started getting a slimy film on the top of my coffee. I have cleaned the coffee pots and checked them and taken them apart and cleaned them thoroughly and still got the film over my coffee. And quite frankly, it's nasty. I left on May 31st. I have been gone for a month and a half. I just got home. I went to Colorado. I went to Texas. I went to California. I even went up to the Sequoia National Forest, made coffee in the same coffee pot that I use here at home because I brought it with me, and never had film over my coffee. When you scoop it out, it actually comes out in one piece.
This is gross.
Now, and it had that when I was away. And like I said, I've been to many different states. I drove from Florida all the way to California and never experienced that. Came back home, plugged the same coffee pot in that I've been using for the past month and a half outside of Deltona, and guess what? I have nasty film on my coffee again. Now, I'm switching over. I can't use Deltona Water. So why am I paying for Deltona Water that I can't use to feed my children with? Because what's in it that's causing that nasty film? And that's going into our food if we use the water. That's going into my children's stomachs if they take water out of the sink.
Showering.
We're showering on it.
Don't forget the ice cubes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I didn't realize, I thought that it was just an issue with the coffee pots, which is why I have done so much maintenance on them. But when I left and I didn't have that and I came back and now I do, it's a problem with our water.
Joy, and your problem is like one of the biggest problems, and that's why it is on here as far as water treatment, distribution, chemicals. That's why it's staying on there, because it is important, and I hope for your safety, and especially safety of kids, anyone that is elderly, anyone that is immunocompromised will take their water and get it tested, like buy it outside, like office, where is it? Home Depot or one of those, at least to find like what the baseline issue is. I know that it's not your responsibility.
It's
and
not
you should be getting safe water, and that's what we're trying to address also, everything that is water. And it's really impactful when you make a statement like that, because people need to understand, the public, the auditors, everybody needs to understand that graphically this is what's going on. So thank you. I know that, thank you for coming in and
And
saying
sharing.
that. Yeah,
correctly.
I think you, another solution to having it tested would be from someone that does not have a commercial interest in it. The University of Florida probably will be.
I think that's one of the best ideas I've heard about that
Test it.
specifically.
Can I get that information from you, Santiago, later?
The what?
Who to contact?
Yeah.
Yep, I mean, I don't have it offhand, I will be happy to help you get that, but that's we did it years and years ago when we, this is like 15 years ago. So, but I just think you should look at it that's not commercial, that doesn't have a profit interest.
And just so you know, I did try it with Home Depot. They don't test.
They want to sell you.
They won't test the water to the extent, like, that's why I spent over $1,000 on a water study from an independent water testing facility, pretty much all the way north of Volusia County, to give me the results, and there was like 40-something pages worth of water
Well, even
study.
more reason that we're moving forward, I mean, we're just
I
at.
keep hearing water quality, you guys, as a major concern from the public.
And that's why it's on here. That's
Right.
why it's on here.
Randy, you have something else?
Brandy White. So I have my own stuff, but I'm gonna read some of the comments. We do have somebody confirming they also get slimy coffee.
Okay.
And when you were asking what are they looking for, and they said it'd be nice if their water just wasn't brown. I'd like to add that I'd rather not take a drink of chlorine because mine is very strong chlorine. I'm not super far from a plant, but I'm in a back quadrant, so I'm the last area that probably should get that. So if mine is tasting and smelling like chlorine, I can imagine those next door to that plant, what they could possibly be getting in their tap. But I think I'm going to touch base on some of the notes I took during what you said before, the notes that I made before coming here. We talked about looking at last year's audit that was already done, the financial audit. And I just have to ask, because I reviewed it briefly and I was a little concerned that there was perimeters put in place on that financial audit. If you look at some of the notes from the auditor, it'll say, well, this wasn't included, that wasn't included, we weren't previewed to this or that, and
Was this, and I don't know, was it specific to the Deltona Water part or the whole audit?
if you look in each section of the audit, they'll tell you, okay, well, we didn't look at this because either we weren't previewed to it or we didn't have access to it, things like that. So if we're looking at a full financial audit and you want to base this audit or give them this report and base it off these numbers,
So what we should probably do, what do you think about this? Look at those asterisks, I'll say, and see how they pertain to the Deltona Water part, and then the committee determines.
I think to
You know what I
just,
mean? To see if it has anything to do with that area. I don't know.
and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Brandy, I think what she's bringing up is when we ask them to go through the financial part, if it is missing, if there's information that they did not have, if we can have them actually go through the information, if we have it, to be included, so it's
Have
an
them
actual.
review that, you're saying, the
Yes.
existing one?
Is that
because I
what-
had to slightly disagree. I know you gave the analogy, we're looking at the blue pen, okay? And you were like, it doesn't look at should we buy the pen. I think we should be looking at should we buy the pen.
I was talking about procurement procedures.
Right, but I'm saying in here, somewhere, should we have bought the pen?
That's a policy decision. That's different from procedure.
Well, and here's where my question is, because I was looking through here and I didn't quite see anything about policy and procedures. I know it's a little vague and it can be intertwined in some things, but one thing I do know and has been confirmed with the director is that there is not policy and procedure that should exist and has never existed but has been used and has told the public it's in the policy. Well, now, as public, we're asking, let's see that policy, and he can't provide it. And he's very upset about that. So he is currently creating these policies and procedures. So with that said, it kind of wraps up to what my notes were before I got here. And it's probably not going to be the popular, statement, but
Go for
as
it.
somebody who went through the budget,
Yeah.
I think I have a responsibility over $200,000 to see, is this legit?
Go for it.
So
Green light.
I see it this way. It would have only taken us 6,000 signatures in this city to get a full city audit to include the water department, right? So instead of doing that, we wanted to ask the state to pay for it. They vetoed the option to pay for it. Get it, got it, good. in lieu of this 6K, and this is where you can correct me if I'm wrong on what I've been told in my research, is instead of this 6K signatures, the commission or yourself could have just requested this audit through OPEGA. So why haven't we just requested the audit and we pay the $75,000 to $80,000 that it costs through them? And they have the powers to enforce what needs to be changed, as this does not have any powers to enforce anything. So I just want to know, because I'm not the only one that wants to
I can
know.
answer that.
That was asked last
And we
week.
asked it last week, first thing,
Yeah.
okay, then they have, go ahead.
I can answer that from the state perspective, right? Because you said, I think you said the commission or myself could have asked for that audit. And you're right, we did ask for the audit. My office did ask for the audit, but it's not me. There's 120 members in the House, and there's 40 members in the Senate. So, and not all of them have to opine on it at that time, obviously, because it goes through a committee process and then it moves forward. You have to be able to get others who agree to it. The Speaker of the House, who controls the agenda to whatever gets heard in any committee. Typically, in most cases, we'll get with a committee chair. And not in all cases, they discuss policies that have been filed or requested or monies that are requested, and you present, as we did present in front of the Speaker's office and the chairman of the committee that would control that. And the consensus amongst that group was that they wanted to fund this separately and not go down that route.
Okay, but stop for a minute, stop, because that's not what's being asked. We're on two different pages now.
Well,
But you're on a different page
she
now.
asked, she made the comment, we're not gonna let the wheels fall off this, okay? So I'll give you your turn, I promise you. I will not anybody not be able to speak.
I'll let you spin.
Make sure you're done before I start. You're done? Good. All right, so I think I was answering your question, because you said that I could have asked this. I think you said that, didn't you?
Well, what I'm saying is at any point from, we have called, obviously, and asked about what does it take to get an audit, and they first said, well, 6,000 signatures based on your city size and the voting and yada yada.
Yep, I heard that.
Or your state representative can request it, or your commission
Okay,
can
stop right
request
there.
it.
That's what I was answering, your state representative piece. I was answering only that piece to it and explaining that I did ask for it. And
You asked for it if they were to pay for it. Did you ask for it if we pay the $75,000, $85,000? That would cover it.
I can't answer that, so I'm not sure, because we had a lot of conversations, and I don't want to mislead you. But we did make the ask, and I'll get back to you on that part of it. Because trust me, we pushed it, but we got steered that this is the way to do it. and
That's the
what we
thing,
went
we
after.
got steered, and that's my concern, because I think there is a more financially responsible way to go about this, considering after the first meeting here, I loved it. I wasn't sure what I was gonna walk into, wasn't sure what this was gonna be about, and I thought it went amazing. I thought lots of great questions, and even resolutions were found when it came to things like policies and procedures and billing and things like that. So if we can already resolve those, because most of you already said, let's make it a committee request. If we can already change those, are we really gonna spend $200K on an audit that we could possibly get for $75,000, $85K if the people just ask for
I
it?
do recall that part of my response that we received also in my office was that they felt that the nature of the amount of work that needed to be done was possibly outside the scope of what our internal folks were that helped do these audits. I don't know the particulars, but I do remember them telling us that. That's why.
Can I?
Hold on.
I was, okay, to this point, I would like everyone to, we pulled this up at the very first meeting, and under the statutes, when it talks about, under the statute number 6, request by a local governmental entity for an audit by the Auditor General. Whenever a local government entity requests the Auditor General to conduct an audit of all or part of its operations, and the Auditor General conducts the audit under his or her own authority or at the direction of the Legislative Auditing Committee, the expenses of the audit shall be paid by the local government entity. The Auditor General shall estimate the cost of the audit. 50% of the cost estimate shall be paid by the local government entity before the initiation of the audit and deposited into the general revenue fund of the state. After the completion of the audit, the Auditor General shall notify the local government entity of the actual cost after the fact of the audit. The local governmental entity shall remit the remainder of the cost of the audit to the Auditor General for deposit into the General Revenue Fund of the state. If the local governmental entity fails to comply with paying the remaining cost of the audit, the Auditor General shall notify the Legislative Auditing Committee.
Sounds beautiful.
So what we're,
So why aren't we doing that?
So I think what we're doing here is, I've heard over the last several months is that we have this citizen-led initiative of many concerns, and people have ideas and concerns and in some cases accusations, right? And here we are in a public forum, allowing anybody to suggest what we should look into, and we are creating this. So regardless of, we send it up there if we can start that process again, or if we come up with everything we want to look at here within this process, the city's got to pay anyway. That's what you.
But
I didn't interrupt
with
you.
your way, this way, there's no authoritative powers to do anything with the results.
No policing
Their way, they have to do the results.
Can I answer that, Representative? And that's
tell
not
them.
entirely true, if you don't mind, I apologize.
If they find something slimy in there, you gotta fix it.
Let us,
That came from their mouth.
But that may be, that's more of an EPA-related issue. When it comes to performance management, performance issues, and general operational issues, when it comes to OPAGA or anybody else, as I was told directly from OPAGA, there is nothing that they can mandate on the city. What they do is they do a report. These are our findings, kind of what's happening here. And then the city is obviously, you know, it's encouraged the city to take those findings and do something about it as well. But there's nothing that OPAGA does can do to mandate unless there is a water quality issue. And that's something I think that the committee is trying to resolve here. If there's a major violation, then at that point in time, it's enforceable at that moment in time. So, Brandy, I'm just saying, just to provide a little clarity, okay?
and I want to cite it
And
too.
is there a difference between OPAGA and the Auditor General?
There is, because there is.
right.
The Auditor General, what they do is they do a full, complete audit. The problem though is it was going to require you guys to get a lot of signatures. I don't know-
6K,
No,
they can do that.
I'll confirm again, but I was told a much higher amount. And the problem was that you guys were going to run into a problem. So when Dana initially started coming to us about pushing us along and trying to encourage a representative to get involved in some way, I think that was the impetus for him to try to get involved at some point in time and say, okay, look, they're going to need X amount of signatures. They may be running out of time. At this point in time, we need to start forcing the hand a little tiny bit. So,
Right, so if we were running out of time, then you could have just requested it and saved us having to get the 15,000 signatures.
No, and we did. And just, you know, Brandy, we did. And so what the representative is letting me know is that I made the request. It was a letter that went to the Speaker's office. The Speaker's the one who directs. So what happens is that I just don't submit a letter to OPAGA or to the Auditor General. What happens is that has to all go through the Speaker's office on our side because he's a House member. And then the Speaker determines what's going to happen at that point in time. It was recommended upon us that the Speaker said, listen, or according to his staff, it was, hey, listen, I understand what the rep's trying to do. I want to help, but I want to do it differently because I feel that maybe OPAGA or others may not have some of the abilities to go ahead and recommend certain things that may be necessary for the city of Deltona. So we said, okay, fine. Ultimately, he's the one driving it. And so what they recommended was putting X amount in the budget to do this full report. As was discussed last week, there was a dollar amount put in $200,000. The Speaker's office talked to me about it and said, look, Eric, we probably will not burn through the whole $200,000, but we're going to put that in there as a cushion just in case. I said, not a problem, I understand. And that's kind of where we're at today because of the veto. So I want to make sure it's out there so you all.
But Eric's had a lot more first-hand conversations. That's why, I mean, he usually gives it to me when he speaks to.
So what happens when the commission requests it?
I don't know.
They don't have to go to the Speaker of the House?
But it still has to go to the state house, though.
Right.
The leadership still has to decide in the state house.
You're influential. You got the first unanimous vote in the whole Congress for Halifax. You can do it. We have faith.
I promise you, you'll be next after the lady over there.
That's all I wanted to say.
At least you keep a little way, folks. We're gonna let everybody talk, regardless of
What date was this that you're planning that you have these conversations, and who is they? Can you say they and them?
I don't know the exact dates. I don't have that.
Do you have a copy of the letter that you
Yeah, the letter's here.
sent?
Yeah, the letter's here. We submitted a copy of the letter to the committee in the first week.
And are you suggesting that you never heard word about an audit of the city prior to Dana talking to you?
I didn't say that. Did I say that?
Well,
I don't know, did any
he-
committee
he
members
did.
can chime in
He
here?
did.
Did I say that?
He
No.
said that when it was brought to your attention that there was an issue, that maybe an audit needed to be done, it was when Dana started
No,
pushing
man,
for it.
so, and I apologize, because some folks were here last week, so we went over the background of what transpired over the past year and a half.
Well,
And so I'm just kind of tagging on that there were calls put into our office, we heard about it kind of out there in the community about, hey, there was an initiative going on, and then about an audit, getting petition signatures, and we were, the representative for at the time had his reasons for it, and I explained to a few folks who called me about it, what the reason for him not being involved at that moment in time. And then I had several conversations with Dana prior to July of last year, 2018, about this issue and the fact that we needed to do something to have the representative listen to a lot of folks and their concerns, and that was the July meeting that we had at the center that started this whole thing rolling down this way. So I don't want to say that we were not aware of it, but I wanted to just let you know that it was that July meeting that we had to kind of got the ball rolling a little bit. So.
and you talked about OPAGA not having any ability over the water quality. I didn't know that this was a water quality study. I thought this was about an audit.
So I would like to speak to that because it is here, and you don't have a copy, but there's a copy right up here of the scope of what we're looking at. So the water quality falls under number 17, 18,
Number 8.
of what we're looking at. We're looking at everything. That's why we have asked for it to be called an audit instead of a study, because we are trying to look at all of those things. So, that's all
All right,
right.
any other questions?
I don't know if you
yeah.
answered Brady's question.
Oh, yeah, Tim, go ahead.
I'm just curious, has the city of Deltona spent any money on this committee or this water audit yet?
No.
No.
Maybe staff time for Sandy, I'm guessing
Okay.
Sandy's part time, that's it.
Will it cost any money for an RFP for the city?
To put out an RFP?
Yeah, will that cost any?
No,
money?
that's just a request
Okay.
for proposals.
So I would humbly suggest that this type of discussion might be, better timed when we have the numbers, what the actual cost might be.
If we want to proceed.
Because I'm not a big spender, don't want to spend, but I think we need to have all of the information before we can make a determination. If it's a budget buster, I don't want to spend that money if we don't have to, but we don't know what the cost will be yet. And I would think that would be later discussion.
So, and I want to put this on the table, just so I think for the peace of mind of everybody, as part of a suggestion, if there is a sincere want to bring peace of mind to our residents, let's just suggest to the commission, if they're really sincere and legit about this, for them to do that petition and ask directly to the state.
Well,
we can do this.
We're wasting our time though here, Santiago.
That's a waste.
I mean,
No, and I think right now, everything should have been done yesterday. This has been ongoing, and it's way too long, and I'll take off my committee hat and put my resident hat on and say, there needs to be a resolution
I
here.
don't think this is a waste of time in any way, shape, or form. It's not costing.
what I'm saying to that is,
Yeah.
you ask.
If we go down the road again.
Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is that it gives them a peace of mind. So it's either we give our suggestion to the commission,
Gives you a piece of mind.
it gives the residents a
The
peace of mind.
only difference is there's accountability to the results and there's not. So that's really the only difference.
I would like to see that cited, just so that we can have that for peace of mind. I would like to
You
see
can call
it.
the Auditor General's office and I'll give you the
No.
name and number of ladies.
I got all of that, but what I'm saying is just for committee purposes, so that we can do our due diligence and be thorough at that.
They'll
I just
send you a
wanna see-
letter.
I just want to see it cited, and this is on record, this is my word to you, as one committee member, for myself. I will do the due diligence on that, okay, as far as that goes, and we will talk about that, because one of the biggest things is accountability and transparency. And that's where we're trying to go here, and I want to be led in the right direction as far as everything that wants to be answered during this. I don't want there to be any, that's why we have the members that we have here, I hope, and why it's open to the public. So I'm teachable and I want to do that. I want to move down this right here and then have dialogue with residents, okay, if that's okay, afterward, and then talk about how that looks.
Listen, and I'll add to that. And I'm not trying to sound negative, but I could be other places, right? I'm volunteering my time here, right? For the cause to help bring a transparent way with you as citizens.
The people you
Remember,
represent.
I'm speaking. Let me speak. I want to
The people you, how about say I'm volunteering my time
Excuse me, he
for
was
the people
speaking.
I represent.
Excuse me, he was speaking. and
Article
he's
1,
gonna get
Section
here.
5 of the Florida Constitution gives me the right to direct him.
Okay.
How about just saying I'm volunteering my time for the people I represent? Instead of making it sound like, oh gee, I got better places to be.
I have,
Tell me when you're done.
I have.
I just want to apologize to the members of the audience that are genuinely here for not some other stuff. And this is just part of what's ongoing, and we're trying to move the city forward.
I'm a 20-year customer of Deltona Water. And for residents that are 20-year customers, and for residents who have been saddled with the 25% surcharge for many, many, many years, and for these folks, we need to do this. And let's not get caught up on semantics of what a representative is and what a representative is not. This is important to the residents, to the customers of Deltona Water. And for me, this is not it is a personal agenda for my part. It's also a personal agenda for the 78 residents in my community that we pay well over $250,000 a year to Deltona Water.
And let me just add though, again, going back to focus where we're at here, why we're here. The point is so that you all, the public, anybody, we've gone to extreme lengths, I think, and we'll implement any other idea anybody has to make sure there's more public involvement, right? That was within reason. We want to make sure that what the public wants, we will ask for it in this study, and we will submit it. I'll tell you personally, I can't hold, but I've had conversations with the commissioners, and I think there is a sincere, I opened with this last week, I think there's a sincere consideration to see what comes out of this and implement some stuff. Now, if they don't, guess what? I'm going to be right behind you. And making big sure that, I told them very clearly that I'd be critical. Some things that I think that are very strong that didn't get implemented, I'm going to be critical of them too. Not for everything, but obviously things that I think that are very so strong, because they still have the ultimate decision. Let's go back to the agenda. I think we're here for a good cause. I'd love to hear suggestions from the public as to what scope, what do you want to hear? And we left off, you can go forward or up to 1 through 9. Is there anybody else that would love to share any ideas or has anything?
Okay, so we're.
I just want to state for the record, I don't know what you think my agenda is. I was in his same boat for 6 years, where I was paying an additional 25% for crappy water. Now I'm here, I'm not paying as much for water, but I still have crappy water. I still can't drink the water. And I have done my due diligence and my research, and I happen to know that this could have been handled a long time ago. And for the record, you think I have an agenda? I don't trust you. You've given me reason not to trust. Remember, right in my face, she was right in my face with a camera, 10 feet away. I got you on video.
Thank you.
I have reason not to trust you.
Number 9. Can we move it forward, please? Thank you.
All right, anybody else want to share anything?
I just,
Oh, wait a minute.
Right back here. Yes, ma'am, thank you. Can you say your name, please?
This is Kim for the record in Deltona. I would like to drink water without smelling the chlorine. And I'm away for 2 months. And I came back, the bill was almost $50 just for the basis. And I don't like that. I think that needs to be changed.
Yeah, one of the things we're looking at is the water quality as part of our study request. It's going to look at the water quality and the billing. I think you said $50 was the base rate. There was another lady here that was talking about that. 45, sorry, close to 50.
Yeah. But base keep changing every year, and the meter doesn't change. They don't change the meter. Why the basis keep changing every year?
We got that in the
We're
study.
addressing that. It's going to be in the request for the audit. So,
all right,
moving to number 9.
We're going to 9. Capital projects and governance.
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, there was one more question.
I just wanted to vouch for what he said. I have drank the water and they run it through a filter. system as well. And I have drank the water at his house, and it is so chemically that, I mean, I had to be very, very, very thirsty to be able to drink it.
And we're addressing it, okay? So truly, it's
I just
not
wanted to
falling on,
vouch for that.
yes,
Thank you.
it's fine.
Capital projects and governance, cost and finance, I'll just read A through D. Cost and financing of capital improvements, CIP development, priority setting and budgeting, management and staffing, project systems. Is that kind of sort of like future stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important. I mean, anybody want to?
Yeah, I mean, where's our infrastructure?
Well, because, we have this big plant over there that's underutilized. What's the plan if they have to put that?
Where is that plant that's being underused?
Off of Howland, off of 415?
Oh, by Walmart?
Yes.
Okay. And that goes in line with the bonds.
Yes.
And the only thing they could talk also that, and bringing that up in the discussion is some final thoughts about the Fisher plant and why it wasn't decommissioned and all of that stuff. So I think that would go through the capital projects governance, so we can really have dialogue about that.
They had talked about interconnecting those two. Does anybody know if they did?
No.
They didn't? Okay. That was, I believe that was the plan to interconnect them.
Mm-hmm. I heard that.
Okay. So we're good with leaving number 9, A through D as it kind of spells it out?
Well, 9C. Are we, did we move that part to somewhere else? Because does that seem redundant?
Yeah, that's on 3 and 6.
That's not C?
Yeah, 9C. Cross that out because that's already on, yeah.
All right. There was one question, and out of full transparency, I want to read it to the committee that came across the thing, and we'll answer them in text message, because I don't know if they're listening, so we're going to send a response here.
Okay.
Why does Deltona Water have floating particles and leave of buildup of black residue on faucets and toilets and under the toilet rim? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure there's a quality.
That's going to fall under
We're going to
number
respond to them.
18.
Yeah, saying that part of our scope is going to be to look at water quality. But I wanted to read out, the committee knows what's been submitted.
Thank you, yes,
Okay.
thank you so much.
Not hiding anything.
Community engagement, number 10.
What is that?
Community engagement. Is the water company exposing themselves to any kind of social functions or sponsoring
I
something?
think the city does that as a,
What is the content of the insert in the water bill? What kind of information is being
the
communicated?
newsletter. I just got my bill, the newsletter was in there, the city newsletter.
Are we happy with that? And I would like to step outside the boundaries and ask, like, are we happy with that?
Oh, that brought me to one of my homework pieces. I am so sorry. We should,
Go for it.
survey, we talked about survey.
Yeah.
And it just reminded me. I did look into had some conversations initially about survey. The research that I did in talking to staff and speakers, it's been a while, it hasn't been done. There've been several discussions about it, but in someone threw back, I said, why don't you just have the auditing company do the survey? That way it's outside, it's independent, the city's not a.
Because I think that if the city does it, it can be used as a tool in the auditing committee, and it can be used as a start point, I mean.
Do you prefer that the city do it?
The survey, how much is it gonna cost us?
It's gonna
That's
cost
what I'm thinking.
So cost as far as what is the
Or allow the
survey?
auditor to do it, right?
So, okay, so here's my point. The cost of doing the survey through the city, what is that cost point versus how much money, what component is that gonna encompass under the survey? Which is cheaper, I think?
Under the audit, you mean?
Under the audit,
Yeah.
yes, which is cheaper.
It's expensive to do the survey.
I would think, obviously, under us, and obviously, that was thrown out there because of the concerns for transparency or influence or any of that, right? So that was kind of sort of the comment that I got, maybe you ought to have considered having the auditor
Do the survey?
do the survey, because the concerns was there funny business?
Are they gonna be manipulating the
Yes.
numbers? Gotcha,
Well,
okay.
Well, you know.
Well, not only that, but how are they gonna
Accused
pose
of it,
the
regardless,
question?
right? Let's just say that.
Or pose the
Well, the
question?
committee have the ability to look at the proposals and say, we want this, we don't want that, we want this.
I mean, so should we request it to be siloed and broken down? I mean,
Have a
price
menu.
points,
Right.
a menu?
Menu, I mean, that way we can be cost conscious.
Yeah.
Then we can really look at and say, is it really worth the money that they're gonna get for that?
And,
So-
and understanding upfront too, and doing that the community has input on that. Also, I think it needs to be presented at that juncture. Tell us what's important.
All right, so you want to add a survey, and then when we do finalize the scope, say if they can give it to us à la carte, basically?
Oh, yeah. What's important to us.
If they could possibly break out some things à la carte, and maybe we can it's gonna be tough for them to tell us everything à la carte, but maybe we can silo a couple
They're
areas.
again
as à la carte.
reading, exactly, they're again reading this report, the audit that's already done. I think that it will help improve our laser focus in the interim, yeah.
So I'm gonna add that as number 19, is that okay?
19, or do you want to keep
Oh,
it community engagement
Oh, you're
as a
right,
survey?
You're right, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Can I just ask for clarification, what are we expecting from the survey? Like, what are we hoping to get from it, and how are we going to
I
use it?
think we would have to determine what those questions would be of the customers, and that, I would think we should do that in a public setting, to figure out what we want to ask.
I think, pain points, some of the things, some of the quality
Quality,
assurance with your water,
price,
the price, the rates. I think we've heard,
To gather information, basically.
Yeah.
basically overall.
I want to know generally, how do Deltona residents feel about Deltona Water?
Gotcha.
What's
we
the
have
heartbeat?
90,000 people there, or 80, whatever thousand people that live here, but I can't speak for all of them.
Right.
I want to know why, when there's an issue with Duke Energy or another energy company and they need to raise rates, they raise rates on everybody. Everybody pitches in. Why does Deltona Water say, hey, you guys 25% or?
There is an explanation for it. It's been explained, and it needs to be explained by the auditing company because of the confines of not being able to spread that specific thing out around. It's over my head. It's been presented before, but I think that it does need
Because
to
it's
be
municipal
presented.
water or something?
It needs to be in.
I think we've already
Yeah, we'd already
talked about
banging
it.
that
It's we're gonna request that the auditor look into that so we can. I really believe firmly, and if I'm the only one, then I'll be the only one that we need to strike that completely off.
Which
It's
one?
unconstitutional. The charging of the additional 25%. It's not right.
There's
They
no-
need to look at
there's
the,
gotta be a
start looking at
governance.
the policy because it keeps going back to that it's
No.
policy that they get to, because based on the rate study, the maximum amount that they can charge is 25%, and they've done that. Now, the audit will say, is that punitive, or should you know what I mean?
But-
that's for them to answer.
And I understand that there's policy. This is where I'm saying that Deltona can be different and set an example. For example, when your rate increase came up, and I think if you guys can just listen for a second, when your rate increase went up from 108 to 128, you have the ability to go up to your commissioner and say, what the heck is going on? He doesn't have that ability. He doesn't have a commissioner. He has nobody to represent him, and his 78 other people have nobody to represent him. That is my point, that we should not be charging that.
I agree with you. That's why I tried changing it.
So
I remember
I'm
you trying to
curious
change
if the audience in here, anybody here from Pine Trace? 25%ers? Yeah, we got a pretty good showing. So in my community, we're fed up. And
That's why it's part of the
Yeah.
audit. And listen, and I know that for transparency's sake also, that well before this, a year ago, when we were out gathering petitions, I know that you and I talked at length about.
We weren't
this.
even allowed to sign the petition.
Exactly, because you were not a resident of, so, and we talked about that point, and then we also talked about how important it was for you to be sitting on this committee because of that, because you represent, and it's Deltona Water, we're talking about
We're all
Deltona
customers.
Water
And-
here.
and because that's a policy decision, and I agree with your position on it. Maybe that can be, and the committee at the end, be siloed in our committee recommendations. One of the ideas that was shared with me today was, and I'm just throwing it out there for transparency purposes, was that should the committee consider recommending to the commission maybe a base rate change, so that we should, like Tim said, reducing it in other areas and spreading that amongst a larger population. And maybe, I don't know what the numbers would be, maybe it's $1 if you spread it amongst, so there's ideas that we can share and make recommendations, but that's a policy decision.
Yes.
And I'm 100% with you, but we'll add that to our separate little report. And maybe give some suggestions of things they should consider
Yes.
amongst a few.
It's a due process decision. It's a due process issue.
I agree with you. I agree.
They have no due process.
I agree.
Right. No, I agree. I mean,
And
I
that does
think,
bring it under what he said. It's a constitutional issue.
I agree.
yeah.
14th Amendment.
Okay, Okay, we talked about survey number 10. 11, did we talk about 11 yet?
Yeah, we did, because
did.
we talked about that with 3 and 6, and we decided to leave 11 at 11, because.
Okay.
That's the back
gonna be-
office.
That's
That's
gonna
right, that's what
be,
Terry was saying.
yeah, that's gonna be a big one, because when we talk about IT, we're also talking about, one of the issues that was brought up during the initial petition drive was, is there a software issue that is glitching and making these bills go crazy? So I think that's when we were trying to weed out what is the issue with the high or the water bills not remaining consistent. So IT should be, in my opinion, at the top of the dadgum list.
Well, and I also think like their phone systems or what have you, I mean, do they have a IVR, you know, where you can conduct business over the phone without having to speak to somebody? You know, I think that's antiquated. When I called a couple months ago, I was like, what is this? You know, so there could be some technology that's
Potentials.
Okay, and we talked about that. We talked about that with third-party billing systems also, how they're not hooked up with third party. If someone goes and pays at Amscot or one of the payment, that it should be directly accounted, and it's not. And we talked about that.
Sometimes we talk about the mailing process.
The
with
mailing
names and
that
stuff.
they use the last name before the first name,
Yeah.
and it messes it up in the USPS.
That's all the back office stuff I was
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
are we gonna have a meeting next week at the same time?
I'll talk about that at the end.
Oh, we-
Oh, you have to leave? The answer to your question is no.
No?
No. We'll be scheduling another date, because I don't think this committee is ready to wrap up scope.
No.
So we'll extend to another meeting for scope conversation, but it won't be next week. 'Cause we have some scheduling, I have scheduling conflicts and others do too.
And I really encourage you, when you leave, to take a copy of this and get online and take a look at how thorough that audit was and give your, you know what I mean, give you an idea of some of the more.
And he
pointed
submitted
questions.
this to us.
Yeah, I saw that, and I will read that. It'll give me time to read this also, because I really want to hear
Maybe
that.
Eric could send him an email when the next meeting will be, so, you know.
Okay. Yeah, you want to give Eric your contact information?
I think I did. but I'll
Yeah, we'll make sure to
it.
see them.
Okay.
Thank you for coming, sir, I appreciate it. Fight.
Sorry we're having to leave, but
Is this it?
We talked about IT already, so we're good, right? We're
Yeah.
going to number 12?
Yes, customer demand and growth.
What does that mean?
What is the future?
What
does
we
it
talked
look
about
like?
that earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, I had mentioned you had did the wastewater system by Walmart. Weren't they, didn't they build that for expansion
Yes.
out towards Port Orange?
Farmington.
Farmington.
Farmington, but
It was
I don't think
largely,
we got that deal.
yeah, it was largely also done to try to spark commercial growth along 415 and that end of Howland, because they have to hook up to sewer services in order to build commercial. So that was the plan behind that. And then also ancillary stuff was to go on Farmington with potential growth in the future over there. That was kind of like the vision. But didn't we talk about customer demanding growth somewhere else? Well, I just tagged that in when I.
I think that was forecasting, you know,
Does,
The growth of the city.
Strategic planning.
yeah,
All right, so
strategic
wanna
planning.
read that? Is it as it stands?
Yeah,
Let
sure.
them kind of see what they put inside there?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 13. Oh, yeah, well, I think that speaks to itself.
Yes, I think 13, we
Yeah,
just
that's very
like,
important.
and we can go into that then again after reading
Yeah.
in more detail.
Yep.
Yeah.
Engineering, number 14. Is that?
I think that one's a little redundant.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
I
They
think
could-
so,
Yeah.
'cause
Take
it's
out 14, striking 14.
relationship.
Relationship contract management.
That's sort of kind of.
Is that
talking about
vendor?
servicing though, isn't it, no? I don't know what that means.
That,
Can we
that
do
relationship
some homework?
15 goes to 11. Wait a minute, no.
Can we look at that? Can we just put an asterisk by it and look at it in more detail?
Based on the old
Look
report,
at
yeah.
the actual, that, you know, the audit that's
So
on.
I'm putting asterisk things on things that potentially will be removed unless we get
Do a
good
little
information.
homework
Yeah.
on it, yeah, yeah. Strategic planning, number 16.
I think that falls into
Future.
the customer demand.
Demand and growth, 12 and
Yeah, I
16
agree.
together.
I agree. Wastewater collection and treatment, oh yeah, we should leave that there, because that talks to
Everything.
the golf course.
Yeah.
And what the plans are for future, possibly, what's it called, reclaimed water? I think that's good the way it is. Water treatment, we talked about that at length.
Yes.
What did I look at? Oh, no, we added it as well. is the second half.
Here's,
So are you gonna combine
here's,
2 and 17?
Number 2.
Number 12.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because that's when I mentioned the golf course. I think we should.
Oh,
You're right.
reclaim water
Just eliminate
system
number
and-
2. Eliminate number 2 and leave it in.
And just add wastewater collection and reclamation to
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah.
So strike 2
And just put
and put the
reclamation.
base rates under there. Yes, Brandy, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all one system, basically.
Base
Look at
rates.
one, look at all of it.
And golf course, right?
Just combine them together.
Yeah.
All right.
and just for clarification, and I'm sorry, it's a stupid question that I'm gonna ask again. We are not trying to get a water study combined with the audit, correct? Because
I think what Brandy brought up was some comments regarding the, what I call the asterisks of things that were excluded. And I think my comment was that I want to look to see how that's pertinent to Deltona Water and whatever those asterisks, how it affects it, if any. And I think you should too, you all have the report.
Because
Yeah.
18 is on there. 18 is on there, and that speaks directly to quality.
let me say that, so here's the issue, this is why, because I did get a bunch of messages on Facebook, and I am in 100% agreement. I think I put this position when I first, in our first meeting, and I know because Tim is right next to me, and I'm probably boring him to death with the same question. It's that if we're gonna do it, my only objection is we do it completely separate. Because, for example, this is what the city of Deltona put out, and it says specifically, it says at its July 1st, 2019 regular meeting, the Deltona City Commission approved funding for a third-party water study of Deltona Water. That does not sound like an audit.
Can I say something here that we have had discussion about this because I think that the word audit and study was used in transition because I'm just going to go back, the spirit of what I wanted an audit when I was collecting petition signatures. That's the way I presented it to you guys and you helped me because it was understood to be an audit. Somewhere among this, it got to be a water study, and I was very clear at the very first meeting that the intent of this is for a water audit. The scope of what we're talking about, financial, operational, performance, right? And the quality is a byproduct of all of these other things. It's a direct result of how these other things are operating. That's why we put number 18 in here, water treatment and distribution. It all matters, and if you know, they're gonna make a recommendation, I guess, that how are you gonna change this, you know, what's going on here. So I think that within the spirit of the true spirit of what this is for, that we understand and we're saying publicly and on record that we want to include the water quality also, because it's a direct byproduct. If it doesn't need to be more thorough than what will go here, I mean, that can only be addressed
And
at
that's
the end.
100% perfect, but, and I hate to keep interjecting.
But you are.
No, and of course I'm gonna do it because a lot of people want to make sure that this is getting done right. Is that I've looked at the definition of both. A water study and a water audit are two completely separate animals. And if at the end of the water audit, they say we should have a water study, I have no problem with that. The thing I don't want to do is get into more debt, our residents, because they're the ones that are going to pay for it, we're the ones that are going to pay for this, is that we go in there, we're asking for a water audit, and at the same time, we're conducting water studies. I just don't see it as something.
So why don't we put a parking lot item on there and get clarification and saying, what is the verbiage here?
Can we
and what
change
does
the
that mean?
verbiage to a water audit?
Hold on.
Or
Let
not
me
of the water.
And I think you said cost is, I think,
Yeah.
your concern. We talked already about a few a la carte items, right?
And I don't mean to interrupt you, David. It's not only that, and I'm gonna tell you the second reason why I'm saying this. And I don't mean to sound like a crazy person. My only other issue is that we continue down this road of we want a water study, and then they end up conducting some weird water study, and then here
Who is
we
they?
come. Whoever the auditor is, or whoever's going to be doing the study, is. Let me just finish my thought. And then they come down, and then they're like, well, you know what? One of the recommendations to fix the water quality is that we start putting people on sewage. That is my biggest concern. Dana, listen. You're entitled to your opinion 100%. I am too. When you make your opinions known, I don't make noises. I don't get upset. I don't get upset at them. I don't agree with everything they might say, but I have enough respect to listen to them because I'm the one here and they're over there. If it was flipped, I would like them to respect my thoughts too. That's all I have to say.
Could you explain, I just want you to explain the thought process more. I totally respect, and I've heard, you know, all of those points. I'm glad you're bringing it up and that we're clarifying. I am, but I want to know exactly how you know, how to propose to prevent them from going down that road is what I want to hear.
I could bring you something next week, with probably more details if you'd like.
I would say this, can we get this out of the air? And I understand where you're going with it, and I think can we answer this simple question? And I'm not advocating for it, but I want to bring the question to the table so that we know the answer. One primary way to bring down the cost of sewer for him and for all those people is have more people sharing in the cost. I'm not advocating for it, but I think that answer, I don't need a $100,000 auditor to tell me that that's one way to bring down the cost. So let's just put that out of the way. I'm not hoping that, I wasn't even thinking sewer, to be quite honest with you, in any of this process, other than that we have a sewage treatment plan and make sure we're running it right?
So I would agree with you on one thing. If it wasn't government, I have never seen. You probably know this better than me because you actually, you know, you're at the house level. I've never seen you give government, you know, specifically anybody give government this amount of money. They add more customers on it, and then they say, well, now you have a savings, you get this money back. Usually they end up keeping that plus the rest.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I've been very vocal and critical on many levels of similar things.
There's so many, David, we have so many people on fixed incomes.
Yeah.
And I do have an agenda with that, is that my fear is more people like my grandmother, who is now living with my mother, is forced to either leave our city or I don't know. That, I mean, people struggle with money in this city. We have a huge elderly community.
Oh, I think that people struggle generally in a lot of places, including Deltona.
And that's why we're doing this. That's the spirit of doing this, to uncover each and every one of those concerns. And that's why we're asking to address each and every one of those concerns. Because here's the thing. Everyone sitting at this table and everyone out there in the audience has been subject to this very discussion. And I think that this is a great platform in order to bring it out in the open and talk about it. It's recorded, there's no backroom discussions, so that everybody is on the same page. And that's why I ask when we're talking about these things to please cite this. Because you know what? I can go off the trail and down the rabbit hole, and I just want to know, I'm learning here also, and I think that the residents feel that way also. So it is a valid concern. I was more exasperated about, I know it's coming, because I'm not denying it and don't want to not talk about it, but it is one of the points.
And to go back to the comment about what are we calling it, I think you characterized the historical naming as to how we got here. Me personally, I don't care about the name. Tell me what we want to look at. Call it whatever you want. What do we want to look at? And you can call it, Walt Disney World.
Unfortunately, you guys know that we're government. With us, I really do believe that all of us here, the 5 of us, have really honest intentions. My fear is when it gets to the decision makers, and one of the reasons I'm here is because I've been very vocal in a respectful way against some of those people out there. I don't feel that they at all times have the best intentions of the residents in mind. And that's just my personal opinion. I'm not speaking for anybody specific.
I get it, some general. I mean, and then I'm going to let you go to Tim next. I apologize. I'm not trying to discredit, and there's a process for that too, right? They're called elections.
No,
and I get it. And then public speaking and sharing and talking about it. And so I'm not diminishing what you say, but we can't fix that here today. Our job to extrapolate from the public, from your personal experiences, from your ideas, and say, what do we all want to look at? And if they don't do anything to some very things, then I told you, I'm on that bandwagon to say what the heck's going on. Tim, and I know, Brandon, you had something, and then we'll come over to Terry.
Yeah, we're all donating our time, and there is some aspect of risk that time will be wasted. The very last point on the summary of the RFP process, number 11, says, if the final cost negotiated is within the city budget, the negotiated cost of the audit, if the city manager she can approve the award to the firm. If the cost exceeds the budget request for approval of award, an additional funding will be brought to the commission for approval. So our scope will be presented to, I would imagine, the city council?
Yes.
And
Oh, no.
or the city manager?
No, the scope of work that we come out of here is going to be sent to the procurement department.
Right.
As long as we're within proper legal protocols.
Right.
That's what's going to be put out for a vendor to bid on.
Okay, so, but who has the final choice whether this moves forward or not?
The city commission. They
City
have the final
commission.
choice on everything.
Okay. So they may not like it. They may say no.
They may not, you're right.
So,
And I don't know the
I
history
didn't forget
here.
about you. I'm just letting the committee finish first and then we're gonna go there.
I don't know all the history here or what have you, but has it been presented to the city before with recommendations? And it's fallen on deaf ears?
Wait, explain what you mean by that.
So, obviously, you've had concerns for over a year, you know, and brought it to the forefront, and we're here where we are today. But even prior to that, or what have you, you know, that people have complained or, you know, have made it known that they don't like the water quality, the rates, everything else like that. So, with no governance, you know, whoever is overseeing this or what have you, and ultimately it's the commission, when they bring this up, did the commission in good faith try to make any kind of changes, go through some, you know, best practices or policies and procedures or changing anything?
They did not,
No.
they did not, and when, I will to that point also add that I think that some of the air of bad publicity, when Dave Denny was here at the water department, there was a different director before him when all of, and I don't mean all the way back in your history or the history of the residents that have been here longer and dealing with this, but in my personal history, there was another director. This fell on deaf ears. I was up there screaming like a crazy woman, right? And when we got involved, there was yet a new director, right? When we brought the problem, the solution, and the expectation to them, these things got changed right away. It was within 2 weeks that the deposit box policy had been changed. There were a lot of measurable changes brought up right away.
Some small things were done.
Exactly. So in that respect, it was listening, but has an audit been has it been put in front of them in black and white in this way? Not that I have experienced.
So the person that made the changes, the small changes or what have you, that didn't come from the commission?
No.
That came from the public works director?
So just to clarify that, actually, I presented an audit, a full city audit. And I know I'm not trying to get into that because that's something else. But I did present that to every single commissioner. And I can tell you that Brian Sukup signed it, Christopher Alcantara signed it, the other people did not sign it. So yes, they were presented with an audit. And only 2 people signed it.
And when we did the petition for the actual, just the water department, I believe that every commissioner signed the petition themselves, and then there are some that were running that signed for it also, including our city
We're at
mayor.
crossroads.
Yeah,
now.
exactly,
That's what I
including the
think we are
mayor
today.
signed the
Okay,
petition also.
and I'm just asking because, you know, you've made some small strides or what have you. So it sounds as if somebody there is willing to say, hey, look, we need to do something here, it's gonna get better. But yet, if it ultimately comes to the commission, you know.
Well, yeah, everything goes. Brandon,
Right.
did you want to add something? I want to back to you.
Just touching base on if we add more users, it'll cost us money. I actually thought that theory was legit too until I did the research, and it's not. The water
Cost us money
department,
or save us money? I mean,
if we add more users under sewer, it's not gonna lower any rates. And that was confirmed
Really?
from the director.
Wow.
So, because it doesn't change anything, you still have the same, you still have to do the meters, you still have all the same things that any other
All the other head.
right, any individual you add still comes with a cost, whether it's maintenance, it's now a meter, it's billing. So they say it doesn't actually lessen the cost,
I
which
don't know if I buy that.
I thought it would.
It lessens the cost of those people who are
The users.
footing the bill for sewer.
Because you're spreading the cost
Well,
amongst a larger population.
But then we looked at that and you're correct, that's not actually how it breaks down and
Wow.
works.
Can we have further, like, deeper discussion on that? Because it is a very important thing, and I just, you know what I mean, the dialogue needs to continue with that, but for like this point, I just really want.
I'd be curious what our current director has to say on that, because this was
Because that
passed.
information was from the previous.
It was previous.
It just doesn't make sense to me, because you share the cost. The cost is the cost, and you share that amongst a larger
But what they're
audience.
saying is that cost is the cost, but when you add another person, that cost just went up. You add another person, that cost just
Yeah,
went
but
up.
there's one meter reader to 500 customers, I'm making up a
But
number.
now you have
Just
1,000, you need to pay for another meter reader.
Yeah, I'll ask. Terry, did you want to add something? I'll ask you.
Well, I just feel like we are off the rails a little bit.
We did come off the rails for a little bit, we're trying to get back on. I hear you.
Because what Santiago was saying, which I don't disagree with, but I just feel like we need to get through this process and get it to the RFP stage, and so that we can find out how much this thing is gonna cost. And then we might even need to adjust our scope
Yeah.
based on the
Yeah,
cost.
I agree.
To talk about what the commission will and won't do, I just think
Yeah.
that that's
You know,
right now we're having a
Terry, I
premature
thought the same
discussion.
thing as you, and when I was hearing the committee members speak, and I said, maybe it's healthy that we get that out right now, because like Tim said, you're volunteering your time here, and I don't want you to feel, I'm hoping that my time is not wasted, and I believe that you all too, so, but I felt that we needed to maybe, once it came out, let's air it. And to your question, Valerie, I think we're at a crossroads with, I think the commission feels that they're at a crossroads with this issue. That's why I'm confident that we may see some traction. I can't promise it, right? But we may see some traction.
And you know what, with as far as the cost, going back to the cost for one moment, going back to the cost, the residents are gonna say what they wanna see done, and you know, I think what they're gonna pay for.
Okay, hey, let's go, I think we've gone through our list. Let's go through a quick, or did everybody wrap up with that?
Yeah.
I'll just, anybody gonna comment before I close?
Yeah, I have a quick comment. Folks, I put out, and this is for the audience, I put out and I know it was short notice, a meeting. There's only 5 people confirmed. Now, one person is sufficient enough, if I was a representative any time, to go out and listen to them, but only 5 people spend my personal money to rent the center. Really was not cost effective, and it wasn't very smart. So I am going to put it, and I'm telling you guys right now, Tuesday of next week, or actually we're not having a meeting next week, right?
What I was gonna propose to the committee, because we have a scheduled conference, I have some too. I was proposing August 21st, to see what you all think.
August 21st.
I know that puts it a little bit out there, but my schedule is really, really tight for the next.
And that will give us lots of time to look at that
Yes.
to look at that audit,
And a
to
little
meet
homework stuff.
among residents, and to take more input and some guidance from residents.
So then I would like to see if I can do the meeting on August 20th. And if anybody here wants to be with me, now that we're out in the sunshine, we can say who's gonna be there. So you wanna be there? Okay.
And just to add to that, from my perspective, I'm not, and I think I said this last week, I'm not opposed to you guys meeting with people, and the more the merrier. And then from my perspective, the committee meets here, and everyone is welcome to come here, share at any time, as been demonstrated very
Yes,
clearly
of
today, that no one that came to this has been diminished from sharing their opinion on this issue.
Is 8/21 a Wednesday?
It is.
It is.
It is.
5:30,
8:20.
same time, is that good? Terry, would
Just one thing that we have not talked about, at what point will we be collecting customer-specific billing examples that we want to hand to the auditors and say, this is an example of this, I want you to go investigate this, this is an example of this. At what point are we going to be collecting customer-specific examples?
I would say that would be in the question during the presentation period, to ask the vendors,
When
they're
do they
willing
want
to do
that?
that, right? And that's part of our screening process. And what do they see as the value in that? Let the experts kind of sort of tell us how that can give us some information back. So I'm not opposed to it, let's throw it out there in that question.
Because we've got a folder, we have a folder, and the thing about it is when they're doing
And I'm
their
sure
investigation.
Santiago will be getting stuff from his meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, to look into anomalies, right? Pricing anomalies, or billing anomalies, I should say. Anybody else got anything, committee members? Thank you for a lively meeting. I think we got some stuff off our chest, which is very good. And I want you all to know I'm still 100% committed to this process, and I'm still optimistic that our work product will help the residents in some shape or form. So with that, we're adjourned. We'll see you guys on the 21st. Thank you. And Eric will be emailing stuff to you all as we get it, okay?
I'm just on wrapping up here. Heading home.